Welcome to Daily Cyber episode number 289. I hope everyone's having a great week. Depending on where you are in this world, if it's evening, morning, afternoon, I'd like to thank you for coming to Daily Cyber. There's a lot of information to cover. I like to thank everyone that's providing comments, feedback, and really just coming out to check out the lives and the podcasts and the streams and everything that we're doing now. It's so much great information to share what's going on in the industry when it comes to daily cyber and cybersecurity, AI, quantum computers, you name it. There's so much changing in the industry. And I'm so fortunate to have great guests, experts in their field come out and talk about their subject matter expert and share their knowledge with you guys so you can take some golden nuggets back, start implementation, looking into what you need to do with your company and your organization, strategies, things along that line. So today, I have a great guest, Lee. He's a former group leader at MIT Lincoln Laboratories, where he's established the Cyber System Assessment Group, which became nationally recognized center of excellence. He led the group in cyber range development, cyber test and evaluation, cyber red teaming, and cyber exploration, as well as the development of the Lariat graphic traffic generation tool. I'll get him to explain that a little bit more. I might have said that wrong. As a group leader, Lee worked with DARPA, testing and evaluating over 30 classified and unclassified programs. He's worked with the Air Force, and he's worked with the Department of Defense. He's done so much. I'm looking at his bio, and there's just so much, he's covered, which is great. So I want to jump in this conversation with Lee and really get him to share his background, what he's working on. And, you guys, if you have any questions, please let us know. We're live right now. So Twitter, X, you name it along the line to let us have any questions. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. Welcome, Lee. How are you doing today? You're just on mute. Give me a second. Let's make sure your audio is working. There we go.
Doing great. How are you doing this morning? Sorry, evening.
For us, it's the afternoon, right? I'm doing great. It's been busy. It's been a busy week. There's so much going on in the industry, right? As I'm sure we're gonna go and dive deep into just all the changes, transitions, companies trying to figure out where to go, what to do. People breaking the industry, seasoned veterans trying to go, okay, like where do we need to do with our organization? So I'm so happy to have you on the stream and have these conversations with you.
Likewise, very exciting. And I was listening over the bio. I was like, yep, that was a few years ago back at the lab. It's good stuff, but relevant.
Well, the thing is, let me ask you this. This experience you have, like, how has that helped you through the years to evolve as a subject matter expert in cybersecurity?
I think it's, let me put it this way. So when I started at MIT Lincoln Lab, which is one of the premier national labs focused on Department of Defense and helping on, national security, I'd say it was great because you get a lot of exposure to some of the toughest technical challenges, at least for cyber, that we are facing as a country. And then as a technical arm to the government, helping create these environments to be able to test and develop and figure out how our national capabilities are going to work. So you almost get a little bit of preview into the future by working with these premier agencies on these premier problems to figure out how they can do it. So that was the government side of it. And then when we spun out and we created the company 11 years ago, it was a lot more working with, besides the military and the government, it's the commercial company. So you get this military perspective and intelligence community, awesome. But then you work with, say, the top 10 banks, and you work with the cities of Boston and New York and others. And so you broaden the aperture, if you will, to go from, say, the government side and then over to commercial and say, hey, there's maybe some cool tools that are happening over on the government side. But hey, there's some really awesome commercial companies that are doing great work. And you get these nice perspectives. And, now it's we'll probably talk about it a little bit, but transition to AI. We're on the next wave over here with all kinds of new companies that are doing interesting and cool stuff. And I'm older, perhaps similar to some other ones, but you see these waves coming, and it's just nice technology inflection points that the industry and the vendors all adapt to.
So one thing I want to ask you, and you brought this up early in the conversation, is kind of your background in the military and with MIT and all that, how'd that translate to the enterprise environment?
Yeah, I would say that it's not always true, but at least in this case where the government actually does a really nice job with developing and testing, I'd say, new capabilities and experiment and bring them out to this notion of a range, whether it's an airplane or a ship or a tank. You bring them out to these proving grounds or test ranges to understand the capabilities and how well does it work and all that. No, I'm not. I'm going to ignore how long it takes to build some of these things at times. That's a different story. But at least the militaries have this nice setup where I'm going to build the tools and intelligence, but then I'm going to train and exercise like I fight. So
Right.
you kind of go from an exercise standpoint and employing it and figuring out how it's going to go through. Yeah, they do a pretty solid job at that. So there's investments that are required to do that. So
Right.
you don't mind spending the money and the time to do these. The challenge is how do you make all of that easy, self-service, appealing to an enterprise, to a company that doesn't want to spend bazillions of dollars and money and time
Mhm.
in going through that effort.
But the thing is, did the technology and the solutions and the strategy translate, or did you find one was more risk adverse and or deference of liability because our response, and I'm going to pick a little bit on companies there.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? As you kind of see, it's like, oh, I'll defer to insurance, I'll defer to someone else, my MSP, MSSP, they'll look after that.
Yeah. I think that's valid. The question is, what's important for a military? It's you got to be able to perform when the time comes. Cool. So
Right.
you train to get ready to do that. That's your end goal. For a government or intelligence, whatever, they got to collect information about
Right.
other people to do that. For a commercial company, you need to be able to, at the end of the day, to make money. So whether you're a bank or something else, and you're trying to balance out security versus the investment that you're going to put into it
Right.
to shore things up. And to me, people don't really start spending money commercially. You don't really start spending money on cyber until you start losing enough money where the amount of money that you're losing is more than potentially the investment that you'll be able to put in to do that. So I actually do believe in insurance and do because you're never going to be 100% perfect. And no matter what somebody tells you, you can never build a big enough wall and all that kind of stuff. So there's a diminishing return on how much security you put into the tech stack, the people, the training. At a certain point, just insure away the remainder. Or I've done enough, or I've done enough to be able to be on par with the industry and the threats that are out there.
So what I'm seeing on my side with, and to that point, is more companies are trying to partner with companies that have a better security posture. So there's a lot of third-party due diligence, and I don't know if you're seeing that, but I'm seeing now is before we work with you, before we partner up, before we sign a partnership agreement, we're going to send you over a questionnaire and do some due diligence, and then once we pass that due diligence, then we'll move to the next. Because I'm sure you've seen it, and a lot of people that are watching it, seen this downstream liability. Their partner gets compromised, business email compromised, and all of a sudden now they're getting phished by valid emails. It's a valid company email, but they're getting phished, they're getting compromised. So I'm seeing more of that, and it's forcing the ones that are not as mature to now to start to step up because their partners or competitors are now stepping up, and those now, the partners and competitors that are wanting to work with, say, X company are going, well, I'm going to work with them because they're now more secure.
Fully agree. We saw this like 10 years ago when we started working with some of the large banks and all that eventually they start kind of pushing it down to all the suppliers.
100%.
And to some degree, it's a tide that raises all boats. You're improving the security. Obviously, if you're a bank, you don't want the suppliers to be vulnerable or the accounting teams or that all needs to be good. And I think it's nice when they go beyond just the paper checklist exercise to actually stress testing the organization to this. Like, I remember when we were a small little startup, and the banks wanted to kind of make sure that they could trust us with their data.
Right.
And so depending on the risk posture, yeah, they can kind of do a little bit of a paper thing, but they would actually send people to our shop. We're based in Boston. Send people to a shop and make sure that not only were we answering the questions, do you have network access control? Do you have a firewall, an IPS? They would want to see it. It's like, show me this one going through. So honestly, I think that's all good. That's a good thing. You're seeing it across the commercial side. You're seeing it across the military with some efforts that are going on. It's called CMNC, where they're really trying to set the minimum bar for everybody to do at least a minimum there. Of course, you then start having some shops that want to just pass the minimum level, whereas others just want to, the leaders, they want to be able to excel, they want to do a lot better and do that.
Yeah, and that's what I think I said. That's what I'm seeing that more and more is that due diligence of
Yeah.
we want you to be at a certain level and we'll work with you. If not, then we're going to go somewhere else. But I think that's the mindset and the shift for CEOs and CFOs and that C-suite is now this is more of a profit center because if we're at a certain level, we can now get the right partnerships, close the right deals. We're going to make more money.
Yeah, and it comes down to risk. And that risk, eventually you're going to have to figure out, how do I bring it down to a reasonable level? I'm sure there's some insurance angle to it as well, where they're trying to look at the potential cost of a breach and work that through. And whether it's internal, self-insured, or external, that probably plays into it as well.
100%. And I mean, I think that's when you look at the full entire budget of resources, technology, solutions. You kind of go, I'm not going to, maybe I'm a $10 million company, maybe I'm $20 million. I'm not going to spend $5 million on cybersecurity, right? It's just not worth it, right? The cost is not there for that. And I get that, right? And I get that people have to build out strategically and over time. So I think this is a great conversation that people kind of look at, how do they do that to build a resilient, risk-based, financial security program. But then the point that I want to bring up too is to maintain it.
Yeah, and I like and AI is making it better in a lot of regards, but there are a number of efforts, even with like the continuous, say, red teaming or the continuous validation, run a lot of these automated tools that are quote unquote banging on your door to see if anything is left open to do that. So it's one thing to do an annual assessment or have a live red team coming in and doing it once a year. And you should do that because there's always a human element of finding the little cracks here. But run through some of these automated continuous tests to just make sure that somebody didn't forget something open or somebody didn't leave something going on. I'll give you a little bit of side story, and it'll kind of make some of the point. We were playing around with just trying to see what's the state of the maturity in terms of these agentic AI red team tools. And so, as a cyber range provider, we have ranges and we have, it's okay, cool. Let's create the environment. Let's make it look like a whatever business network hassle. Let's throw it in and say, good luck. See what you can find. Go to town. Because again, don't really care if it actually breaks anything because it's fake. Before you know it, I'm getting all these alerts from our security team that that something is popping out and something is getting into our GitHub server and all that. And the point here was, the range was not completely isolated from our production. We had set up some little mini rules years ago to allow it to be able to poof and figure it out. And so, oops,
nope,
did I lose you there for a second?
Yeah, you're still there.
Okay. And the tool figured it out. So it's like, there's a lot of these things that we may have set up over the course of the years. Hey, let me do an exception for this rule. Let me set up a connectivity to this supplier. Let me set up a thing. And you forget about those. And having these little automated checkers that are going through and finding them is not a bad thing to be able to kind of just re-question the assumptions and what was set up years ago and shore things up.
So then let's kind of go back into that because you're talking about red teaming.
Yeah.
Let's talk about red teaming at its scale. You hear everyone going, you need to get a pen test. Oh my God, if you had something to pen test. When did you do your annual pen test? Like pen test. Like everyone's kind of talking about, but talk about what's really red teaming and then how do you do it at scale?
Yeah. So let me tie this back to your previous point about suppliers. And it's a good thing. We actually had a requirement from a number of the companies that we work with to do an independent third-party red team assessment on our shop as a supplier that everybody else goes through. So every year we have to show that we were actually doing it and passing it. Okay, cool. So that's something that needs to be done. But there's an expense to that, like you would imagine. It's the cost of doing it. But again, any reasonable company, I would say, wants to be able to do that to make sure, hey, where am I at? How good am I? And go through this. There are a number of companies that, yes, do that. And there's a human element that takes time to be able to go through those. But there are, there's companies that are doing the automated red teaming and automated pen testing. And I can name some if you want, but those are commercial companies that do a good job. But the interesting one now is the AI is throwing a nice little angle in it. So it's actually accelerating the ability to kind of do it faster and find more potential issues. So there's, yes, the human element of doing the annual pen test, but that scales linearly with the number of teams that you have, and there's more expense to it. Mm-hmm. The automated ones are allowing you to just run it continuously. And especially with, you see the stuff in the news, lots of new vulnerabilities being discovered on a regular basis. I think AI is going to find more and more over time to do that. So It's
Now,
always good
through that, I have a question about that. So through that, are they technically going through and compromising that vulnerability that they find? Because I know with vulnerability scans, they scan it, they say, yeah, we've identified something that is, vulnerable. We now have a criticality and a risk, and they give you that and the MITRE score and like all of that, right?
Yeah.
But the one concern I always have is with the AI doing the pen test, like a really one, because as we know, and people watching, if they don't know or not, generally a pen tester is what they're trying to do is they're trying to compromise a vulnerability and see if they can get access, right? And pass that and compromise that, and then take a screenshot. Again, we want to be very careful here. They have rules of engagement. They have a contract with the company. They're not just doing this blindly. So if you're going to do a pen test, and I'll put in quotations here, you have to have rules of engagement, sign contracts, like that. But when they do it, they have that rules of engagement of what they're going to look at, see if they can compromise. And then they show that if they can get in, they show proof, screenshots, notification, taking a text file, whatever that may be, or leaving one in that place. And then they kind of get back out and they document it, right? So how is AI working through that?
Yeah, let me give you two angles on this one. One of them, you're absolutely right. A big part of all those rules is don't break the production network. Right. Don't break the network that's making us money that we need to be able to have, whatever, do banks, hospital, power company. Don't break the network. So a lot of these rules are fine stuff, but don't push it to a breaking point because that's bad. So that's part one. So a lot of the times you do the red teaming, you're finding, you're finding the issues, but you're not really pushing your organization to failure because you can't break it. And I'll come back to that point in a second. Sure. Yeah. The other one, you're right. A lot of times these are really more about find a vulnerability in an app, and then there's a mental exercise. If you get in, then you can do whatever. And that's all important. So Project Mythos and others are just showing that there's going to be all kinds of vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities are going to be popping out all over the place. They're going to be finding them. AI is helping to discover them faster and faster. To me, honestly, that's not the interesting question. So what I mean by that one is resilience for an organization is not trying to basically say I have a higher wall and I have no vulnerabilities and I'm completely vulnerability free. You're not. There's going to be vulnerabilities. There's going to be issues. To me, the question is always for a large organization is assume breach. Assume an attacker can get in. Now the question is, and they can get in because they found the vulnerability, they found a 0 day, they found an insider, they got in. I just assume that that's going to happen. Now the question is, how good is your technology stack and your team able to pick up on that and respond? So it's the detection and response, I think, is more interesting to be able to do because the attacker will get in if they are determined to do that. Sure. A lot of these pen testers are trying to just close the door a little bit. So then the question is, how do you stress all of the other security controls besides just the vulnerability scans and the O-Day to be able to do that? And that's where, at least the way we run it, is you run these cyber ranges, which is realistic environments that you can let the attack. If an APT or attack had 40 steps and step 3 was get into host using an O-Day, you haven't really exercised the 27 other steps out of 30 to be able to figure out, well, did you have detections for lateral movements? Did you have segmentation in the network? Did you have data leakage stuff in place? Did you have mechanisms to find anomalies in the patterns of traffic to do that? So you have all these other security tools that you never really get a chance to stress test and to test out if all you're doing is trying to actually patch a 0 day. So I think the more interesting pen testing red teaming is not just the finding of the vulnerability. Just assume that there's going to be one. Go through all of those other steps, but the challenge is without breaking the network.
Right. And that's what I think my question is, and I'm still trying to figure out, because I haven't heard someone do it successfully yet, is the AI doing a real true pen test?
I haven't either, is the quick answer. So there's a lot of, I'll call it hype. There's a lot of claims, and maybe there's some agencies and people are doing it effectively. We've been going through the market and looking at all the AI red team pen testing companies. So whether you're a breach and attack simulation company or an automated pen test company or an automated red team, when you actually take that tech and put it into the range, there's a big difference between what the websites say they do and what actually happens in production. What actually happens, what the tool can do. And many times it's on the roadmap, many times it's coming. By the way, it is cool. There's some advancements, but there's also, let me take a step back. With any new big technology change, there's a lot of hype there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of confusion.
A lot of marketing. A lot of marketing.
A lot of marketing.
Yep.
I was out at RSA 2-3 weeks ago, whatever it was, and every booth was AI and agentic. Everything is about agentic. Doesn't matter what the product was.
Well, you know as well as I, because you've been in the industry long enough. You know that the big push of next generation. And you go and you talk to sales, and they're telling us next generation, it's next year. Well, what is it? It's next generation. But what does that mean? Like, what actually is the tangible thing? Oh, but it's more innovative. It's more this. Great. That's a lot of description words. Well, what does it actually do? But it's next generation. And I find right now AI is similar to that.
It is.
Right? Because they're trying to figure it out. And I mean, in time they will. I get that. Right? There's a lot of good companies that are coming up with solutions and things along that line. But I think we're just like the web, innovation, technology, AI, we're at that starting point of what can we really do?
We are. And so that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of money being put into the field for defensive tools, offensive tools, you name it. There's a lot of new companies that are popping up. There's a lot of existing companies that are adding to it. And there's a lot of noise and confusion with all of that. And so in my mind, 2026, a little bit 27 is going to be experimentation. It's going to be trying things out. There's going to be a lot of stuff. I think the market and the stuff is going to start stabilizing. And I'm going to make a number up. Out of the 100 players that are popping around, there's going to be the 4 or 5 ones that gravitate up to do that. Who are they? Honestly, I don't know. It could be the existing player. It could be some existing players that are just dominating. Right. It could be some new company that we never heard about that's going to emerge. You know what, Brendan? It's almost like I make the analogy back to the cloud 10 years ago. Remember how everything, there was this whole thing about Amazon and Oracle, among others, and IBM and Google and Microsoft. There's this big cloud craze. Public cloud is going to be great. And you can picture in every large enterprise, the board and the leadership was like, what is it? How does it impact me? What do I do with it?
Right.
What is it? How is it relevant? And eventually, the markets solidify with the key players, the enterprises figured out which is the right company to choose and to bet on and to use and to leverage. And now it's honestly mature.
Right.
The players have emerged. The companies are using it. We're in those, in my mind, we're in those early years right now with lots of excitement, lots of companies, lots of noise, lots of claims. But when you really start sifting through those claims and trying them out, you see that there's nuggets, but they're not quite there. And even the large enterprises that we work with and we talk to and say, hey, which of these have you put into production? Which of you have you actually started using? The answer is not really that many. Right. They're all going through the internal pilots. They're going through the internal experiments to try them out. And there's promise. It's just not quite fully there yet.
100%. Now, you mentioned cyber ranges. Talk a little bit, like, what are cyber ranges and how are they applied?
Yeah, no, great question. A range in general, just like in the, I'll call it the kinetic sense, whether it's airplanes or tanks or guns and all that kind of stuff, you go out to a safe, contained environment to be able to try the thing out. Both in terms of pushing the technology to limits, does it work? But then also put the operators in there and use it and go through. So a cyber range is similar to, let me put it this way. Do you remember the movie Top Gun with Maverick and all these guys? So remember how Tom Cruise is out there and he's going up against these young pilots that are going through? They're effectively on a range. They're basically going out, they're flying, they're training, they're pushing the aircraft, pushing the pilots to the limit, every day coming back, doing the after action, what worked, what didn't, how did I kill you, how did I stop you? They're doing all that technology and people pushing so that when they get called up to do it in the real world, seen it, done it, run it. And then back to Tom Cruise, he was practicing his bombing run over something, and then eventually when they get called up, they go do that. A cyber range is no different.
Right.
You have a very realistic environment that has all of the right elements, the clients, the servers, the cloud, the on-prem, the security stack, the background traffic to create the noise, the automated attacks. And now what you want to be able to have is a high fidelity representative version of your company network. I'm not saying it's a one-to-one, but it's a representative version with the security stack and the tools. Now in that setup, with all the background traffic, the users doing stuff, in that setup, you can now put your current security stack, firewall, EDR, NDR, whatever. And now let's put in some new agentic blue tool and agentic red tool and try it and take it for a spin. So that's where I joke about it is, that's where you want to be able to push the stuff to failure. figure
Okay.
out how it's going to go in a bad day, and then you can experiment and test and make better decisions on it. So a cyber range is nothing more than just a safe, very realistic setup that you can actually develop, test, train in, and learn from before doing it in production.
So more of a, like, if we're going to talk about enterprise terms, that's more of a sandbox development area that's isolated, right? Okay.
Yeah, but sandbox or a dev test environment is another popular thing that people think about is, hey, it's a dev test. You wouldn't take a brand new tool and throw it directly to production. You go through the dev test process, you prove it, pre-production, going through those. The distinction I'm going to make is usually a sandbox is, for the sake of argument, 5, 6, 7 virtual machines, a few key apps. We want to make a version that has hundreds of virtual machines to model the clients, the servers, the security tools, the traffic. So there needs to be a lot more realism so that the tech can actually get a sense of what is normal, and then the attacks hide in it to be able to figure it out. So, but it's a big sandbox is one way of thinking about it.
Yeah. I think the big thing that, people are watching to understand, a lot of times when you're looking at development area, and the reason why we bring it to sandbox is because it's not exposed to the external environment.
Yeah.
Because if you are doing testing, you are having a vulnerable application, network, whatever, server, whatever that may be, you don't want the real, threat actors going, oh, I just did a scan and I popped something.
Yeah.
Now I have access. Where am I? What am I getting into? And also now they're in, right? So you want to have that development area sandbox so it's not exposed while you're doing the testing you're talking about.
Oh yeah. And honestly, I also think that this is one where a lot of these, back to all the craze with all the agentic tools and AI tools, and by the way, which are really cool. Many of them work in idealized environments, in lab environments, but most large enterprises are messy and complex.
Right.
They have legacy systems. They have merger and acquisitions where you mash together multiple networks. I remember in some government setup, we're in some foreign network or in some network, and we were looking at the DNS, so it was all dorked up here, and the DNS and the other one was all dorked up, and it was 2 errors that made the thing, it's like, how in the hell is this even working? And it was just a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid that actually somehow made the things flow. But my broader point is, you want to be able to set up and test for all of these corner cases, these complexities that you don't normally see with, especially if they are the things that are making you money. So these legacy systems or these complex systems are important to be able to really test out and harden before you go live.
Now, if you were going to give someone a recommendation, and say on the enterprise side, like how they would do their due diligence, so they're doing real world testing properly, what would be that checklist?
So for their existing network and how to make sure that it's good, or for testing out new security tools?
I'm CEO ABC. I know I have to do real world testing. What do I need to know when I'm talking to a vendor, a partner, whatever that may be, that, hey, we have to do testing, that I check all the boxes, that there's not something I didn't know and I missed?
Yeah. So let's just take it in 2 vantage points, because I think it does change. So the one is the existing security tools in the existing stack, which is very static. It's very fixed. You know what the SIM is, you know what the firewalls, you know what those things are. And of course, you're going to put it in the lab and you're going to test it out. Listen to the vendors, do the POVs, get into a realistic set, you can do that. So I think you would go through that process right now of baselining, where are you currently in your, like, large enterprises many times have many more tools than they actually use. So typically the number is about 150 security tools. It's a ballpark number, of which there's a subset of that is the ones that you really use on a more regular basis. Mm-hmm. So what are the tools that you normally really need? Which are the ones that you are looking to close some gaps because the landscape has changed? So just get a baseline on where you are. I think the question then becomes, where does the AI and the agentic, all the stuff that's out there, and there is value, which of those are going to be the right ones for me? So actually, and so now the question is, how do you test some of the new agentic solutions with your existing stack? And that's hard to do without, I'll call it the large sandbox or the range and all that kind of stuff to do those. I think it's important to leverage some of the more promising AI solutions, because the threat is, so just like there's investments in AI to be able to build better security tools, those same AI is being used on the offensive side to accelerate the attacks. So it's accelerating the discovery,
Right.
the reconnaissance, the finding of vulnerabilities to get in there. So if you are not keeping up with advancing your security stack, then you're not keeping up with the threat. But to answer your question, the way we've always tackled it and we've always looked at it is we call it an AI proving ground. Let's get it in a realistic setting, realistic environment that you can actually see how well the tool performs against a suite of automated, sophisticated attack scenarios with a representative version of your network that may have some key applications with all the traffic in there. So that's when you're really going to be able to figure out how well does this perform, A, individually, but then B, with the rest of my stack.
Right.
Once you have a good baseline on it and you can push it with all the more sophisticated attacks and see how it does in a more destructive mode, I shouldn't say that, in a way that you are not afraid of breaking production, you can really start stressing the tool. So push the tools to the limit is what I like to think. Push them to the breaking point.
Right.
The purpose of that dev test allows you to do that, a sandbox, or the proving grounds allows you to do that. So as far as the checklist in my mind is, let me get a baseline on how I'm currently doing. That can be coming from the pen test reports. That can be done from your scans. Let me get a sense for, or some actually, let me get a sense of how what my current baseline is. Understand the gaps that you may have, either from the reports or the assessments or something you've done. Figure out how you're going to close those gaps, and then maybe use and test out some of the new solutions to see if they improve the security and you are confident in the results.
Okay. Some I would add to that, and again, anyone that's listening to this, you probably want to do your due diligence on, like you were talking about earlier. What are you really testing for?
Yeah.
Is it compliance and regulatory? Is it a new product that's coming out? It's your current infrastructure. Understand your scope, right? And what's your rules of engagement and timelines? Like, can they do that in the middle of the day? Do they have to do it after hours? When's your production? I know sometimes when I was talking to different pen testers and working with different organizations, budgets are going on, production's going on. Like, they can't go between this time or this week. Testing can't happen. So you need to know that as part of your schedule as you're talking to the partner. What are you going to test? When are you going to test it? How is it going to be tested? What type of permissions do they need? Do they not? That's going to be the checklist you're going to have to go. And then you have to go through, like you said, is it in production? Is it in development? What's the sandbox? What's the areas?
Yeah.
Going through that due diligence and the rules of engagement, because you don't want it to slide. Oh, we didn't know. We thought we had carte blanche. It's like, no. Everything is listed out is in the rules of engagement acceptable. Everything else is not acceptable. You can't do that because you don't want them to moving lateral in the environment too. Say they got in and moved lateral from your server down to your Active Directory and started playing around with your Active Directory. Now took the whole company down, right? Like, hold on, what just happened? Oh, we didn't know we couldn't go with your Active Directory. We just got access from your SQL server and we were able to move laterally there to the Active Directory. It's not in scope, right? Those are the things I think are important that organizations know, so they document it, because they're going to get a good report. They're going to get the understanding that what's going on, and then they can get if they wanted to test their Active Directory, they can do a test specifically for their Active Directory. And like you were talked about, maybe they set up a secondary one in development that they test in a development sandbox versus in production, right? So they don't affect their employees that, hey, all of a sudden I wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm logging in, and I'm like, hey, I can't get in. My accounts, I can't get access. What's going on? The help desk is getting 200 calls that no one can log in, right?
Yeah, and I think there's all these war stories where somebody did something and they broke it, and so they put so many constraints on it they can't really find something. It's like, cool, that keeps you from breaking anything, but the purpose of these assessments, red teaming, pen testing is to find the flaws or the issues before the adversary or somebody else does. And then it can be really damaging for this. So there's definitely always this balance. I've seen it on some military stuff where they don't even let the red teams touch the real systems anymore, the real network, because they're worried. It's like, all right, cool, but you have the purpose of them is to help you find issues before it's a really bad day.
100%. Now, with that being said, one of the things I want to ask you is, so we're talking about testing. You got the report.
Yeah.
How do I build out resilience? Like, what do I do at that point?
Yeah. So I think that one is, I look at it as two parts. There's the resilience on the stack, which is the security tools. How do you make sure that you have a whole series of think defense in depth? It's not just a bigger firewall and it's a better thing. How do you actually find all of the other patterns that you may see over there. We were talking a little bit before about detecting lateral movement, and it could be just finding deviations in normal traffic patterns that are going on, or it could be finding some ways to that. So let's make sure you have a nice set of tools that are finding across the kill chain various things to it. That's the technology side. But I think resilience to me is the combination of the tech and the people. So in other words, you can have a great security tool, but if the operators don't know how to use it, don't know how to actually take advantage of it and go through, not useful. Likewise, you can have great operators, but if they don't have the tools, or a great team, if they don't have the tools, they can't see it. So I think as far as resilience, build a security stack. Make sure that it's actually good via the assessments and the pen testing that you're doing. Awesome. Make sure that you can find things beyond just the vulnerability that you can really exercise on. And then in my mind, you're running some frequency of a team-based exercise or a team-based event so that you can actually make sure that the team members leveraging the tech are able to execute the playbooks or execute the investigations, the hunting, the triaging, all that, so that they are ready and you have a good sense of it. Run it, seen it, done it. They're not figuring it out in real time. How good. So to me, the resilience is a combination of the tech, the teams that are actually using that tech, and of course, there's the processes that go with it. I've seen some where we're running for picture top 5 bank. We had a model of their network, had it all set up in there, have the security tools. This is a more sophisticated one. So they wanted to stress over a 24-hour period, 3 SOCs, one in the US, one in Europe, one over in Asia, shift handover. And you know what? There was they were running through that. One of the leads and the manager was just collapsing under pressure. You know how it was just one of these things where some people handle pressure really well, others they're just overwhelmed. And you know what? We found that it wasn't a tech problem; it was a people problem.
Right.
They were going through or finding those. So to answer the question, resilience to me is effectiveness of the stack, effectiveness of the team. And I think what you want to be able to do now is also balance this out with, yes, I have my standard attack scenarios that the red team is doing. What if I infuse it with agentic and AI-based attacks? How does my current stack and team react to fast-moving automated scenarios?
Right. And I think, like you're talking about, totally agree with everything you're saying. I would add the stress test and the tabletop exercise. Like,
oh, yeah.
Right. The tabletop exercise, kind of that stress test.
Yeah.
Where it happens is you're in. See, I did several tabletop exercises, lots of them with organizations, and we created the scenario of an actual real IR, a ransomware event, not the point where, okay, I have time to read and I'm going to look for the instant response and I'm going to go over here and then, hey guys, it's time for lunch. And then we're going to come back. It's like you're running through it like, hey, you just found out this is what happened. Now what do you do? Okay, great. Now you're meeting with the team right now. The security response team now has a war room that we now spun up. Now what do you do? Who's going which way? Okay, it's been 15 minutes. Now we have a status update. And it's like what do I do? And then the real situation, as you and I know, is it is like that. And you have to know the tech stack. You have to know where you're going through your logs, how you're pulling everything.
Yeah, honestly, let me build on that. I think the tabletops are actually really good, more than just the technical. It forces an organization to think through the leadership, the board, the CEO, the CTO, the CFO. All right, what are my reporting requirements? When do I need to talk to the lawyers? When do I need to be able to actually put articles out there? What do I put on social media or not? And so that natural balance between the attack is happening, there's the fog of war, you don't know what's going on, the tech teams are scrambling to try and give some updates, while potentially the stock ticker and other things is moving. So that combination of I'll call it the strategic, the leadership team trying to make decisions for the business, with the technical side trying to answer and come up with solutions under real-time pressures,
right,
is actually really good. We're doing an event coming up. I'm taking a side tangent. There's something coming up in about a month down in Florida, in Tampa, where we're actually going to be doing a combination of tabletop and range-based, but it's for the city. Picture this: a cyber attack hits Tampa in the middle of a hurricane. Right. And what I mean by that, and the cool part is, hey, natural things happen all the time, natural disasters.
Mhm.
What happens if somebody runs an attack at a really bad time for
Right.
some other things that are going on? And now how does the city, municipality, police department, water treatment deal with the natural disaster
Right.
and cyber at the same time? And it's all about triaging, prioritization, dealing with the pressure, coordinating across these, which is very cool.
Well, you brought that up.
You're figuring out what's happening, not because you want to see that in the real world, but it's preparedness.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you bring that up. There was actually the show, The Pit, which is a medical show.
Yeah.
The last couple episodes, they did this. They had a ransomware event, but they thought it was an active shooter. So it was an active shooter at another hospital. They did a ransomware event, all kind of going on. They're getting rushed with all these patients coming in because one of the hospitals closed, and all the ambulance now are being redirected. So, like you said, there's so much going on in one incident. You have multiple incidents, everyone's scrambling, and now to try to figure that out. So it's interesting because, like you said, having multiple events going on at once is one of the bigger stresses, because even dealing with a ransomware, don't get me wrong, it's stressful enough. But having something else like a power outage, a hurricane, a tornado, anything like that now adds more complexity, because as I do, okay, your uptime might be 48 hours because you have warm sites, hot sites, you're going to but if now power's out, that hot site's dead, right?
You know what we've done is, part of when we do some of these exercises with the tech and the people is it's going to be a bad day. There's going to be just so much happening in an 8-hour period, if you will. And we may even throw things like ransomware and things as chat for distractions. In other words, there's a ransomware going on over here while I have a model of the bank and I'm breaking into the domain controllers, the automatic teller machines and all that. And so part of the leadership choice is there to deal with multiple concurrent events and triage. Like, hey, yes, there's a ransomware going over. SOC lead. Okay, I need to pull off of that and look at this funny stuff over here to make sure that you're prioritizing properly where you're actually spending your time.
I think that's like what we're talking about. And just so people, this is really the difference between training, and then we're going to talk about like the future training in my perception, and I'll get you to kind of give your insight, is before you used to do cybersecurity training, you do like, you go to know before, you read something, you watch a video and all that. I think what you're talking about, and I see this now, is the tabletop actions. They're really getting into the, like, your hands dirty. Yeah. That's the true cybersecurity awareness training, because it shows what you know and what the gaps are. So when you do the debriefing, you kind of go, okay, areas of improvement. And then you can work on that, because the backups didn't recover properly. I didn't know that, one of the backups, Veeam wasn't working, or how we could recover that way. It wasn't air gap where we thought. I worked with one organization where it's like, we were going through a tabletop action and said, okay, you have your vendor on the call. Okay, you have in your policy, in your incident response plan, the backup is going to be, tested, scanned for viability, and then delivered in 24 hours. Have you confirmed this with your vendor? He goes, no, it's going to be 5 business days. He's like, what do you mean 5 business days? We need it on site within 24 hours. No. It's going to take us, time to extract the data, to put it on a drive, to do all that, to scan it. It's going to be, if it's on Monday, you're going to get it by end of day Friday. Mind blown, right?
But that's why you do these. And it's you're right. Every organization, I'm sure, has playbooks, standard playbooks for what you're going to do under these conditions. You've written them, you've thought them through, great. But now let's put them to practice. Let's try them out. Let's see how well they actually work under these. And by the way, part of the lessons learned and the after action is, step 2, 3, 4, those were dorked up. Let's update those. And even if you have them, you want to be able to actually exercise so people are comfortable with doing it and finding those. So yeah, 100% agree.
The other thing I want everyone to know that's watching this, make sure the team is trained, not the one subject matter expert. Because one thing I was doing was, we were doing the scope of it, and I kept realizing with scope, there's this one subject matter that knew the whole environment. Been there for like 15 years, understandable, but every question went to them.
Yep.
You're like, okay, so what happens with the DNS? I'll do this, and I do this, and I do. And what happens? I do this, and I do that, and you're like, okay, what I'm going to do in the tabletop? I'm going to pull that person out, and then see how the rest of the team goes. And they kept saying, well, I'm calling John Smith. John Smith would do that. Well, John Smith would take care of that. It's like, what do you guys do? And you see paperwork going all over, run books coming up, playbooks. Okay, this is how we do it. But then it showed the organization, the senior leadership, you need to do more cross training. You need to make sure you have failover. You have redundancy of it, because if he's not available, your instant response, everything starts to fail. Your disaster recovery fails.
You're right. Resiliency is also about some of the key people with having enough depth on the bench to make sure that if they are out or gone or something, they can do that. I remember there was one of the big banks that we work with, and they were very forward leaning and all that. And the first time we always had the A team on there, if you will. There was always down there doing well. The leadership even just says like, no, I want actually my B and my C players on. I'm going to start the attack over on the Singapore side. I should say Singapore, India, whatever. It was just the newer thing. I want the attack to start over there so that by the time it hands over back to my key guys, the full network was compromised, fully was going on. So in other words, the key guys had to basically come in and do mop and recover or mop up, and or they intentionally kept them out to see how the other ones would do and put them into a little bit more coaching mode down the road. But that's part of resilience, which is yes, the stack, yes, the team, but also what happens if you start knocking off tool number 1, 2, and 3, and knocking off team members 1, 2, and 3? How well can you deal under degraded operations? I remember some of the attacks, our red teamers, you'll appreciate this one. We had our red teamers going in and doing stuff. And of course, they're trying to kind of stay ahead of the tools, but they would actually take out, where appropriate, the security tools to blind the defenses to not be able to see that. Okay, cool. So what happens if you don't have Splunk or you don't have Tanium or you don't have the tools? Can you still carry things out to do that?
Right. Which is, I mean, it's something that when you do these stress tests, tabletop exercise, it's stuff you need to do because these are the things that are going to happen in a real life situation. It's not going to be, and this is where you kind of talk to people. It's not going to be, I pull out the instant response plan, disaster recovery, plan, and it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and everything works and everybody's happy. We're all having Tim Hortons donuts and coffee, and everyone has it's 72-hour sprint. The backups aren't recovering. Something's encrypted. Things are not working. And they're trying to figure it out on the fly. But at least they have structure of what to do, and they kind of go through it. Versus it's just Hail Mary. Everyone's trying to figure out and throwing things on the wall, right?
Let me tie it back to our earlier comment, which is compliance and GRC and leaders versus followers. I think it's good to be able to have a lot of, we were talking earlier about just minimum standards, minimum check, minimum compliance, and there's tools that allow you to kind of quote unquote check the box. And by the way, it's a good thing. You should be able to go down that list and make sure I have a firewall, I have this. That's the minimum bar. But then the shops that we're talking about, tabletops, live exercise, all that, they're not happy with just passing the checkbox. What they care about is we're going to be leaders. We're going to make sure that we are awesome. We're going to make sure that we're going well above and beyond, because our reputation, our business, our whatever else highly depends upon this. And we're going to go through those extra steps to make sure that we are prepared as an organization to do it. It does take more investment in some of that, but they see some of the downsides of not doing it and going through it. Again, just even based on what you see in the papers, you can tell that even some of the big banks are very forward leaning, even on AI. Some are not quite so much. But the forward-leaning shops are probably the ones that are going to be really excelling in 3-5 years from now as they embrace AI and the tools, versus ones who are just doing just enough. How about that?
Well, I think to your point too is they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to detect and respond, and the incident's going to be minimal compared to one that's not. And you and I know this, is that now the incident's been there for 2 months. They've actually been in the environment for 2 months and doing reconnaissance, versus that other organization caught it within 15 minutes to half an hour, stopped the connection, stopped, reset passwords, got that, and stopped the persistence. And then that person's out, the threat actor's gone. So I saw that when I was working instant response, where one organization did their due diligence, went through training, and they told me hey, we had an event. It looked like it was going to be a ransomware event. We detected, respond. The security team was on. They blocked the ports, and they had that checklist they went through, and they had it resolved within an hour.
Honestly, that's also where they should be. The longer an adversary is in your network, the more damaging it's likely going to become as they're poking around, they're sitting in there, they're finding stuff. So that's why, in my mind, it's not about the 0 days or the vulnerabilities. It's about your ability to detect in a timely manner post breach somebody that's in there and moving around. Do you remember back with SolarWinds with a compromise and the Mandiant? So that's an attack that was, I'll give credit to the Mandiant guys. They found it. They were digging into it. It's like, why is there this funny behavior? They had the skills at the time to dive into it. But that's an example of a life cycle attack on a core business app that wasn't coming from the outside, bouncing through something. It was established. Those are the type of attacks and vectors you want to be stress testing or testing to make sure what happens if I have a compromised router at the lifecycle or an insider or this. How well can I as an organization pick up on these and respond when it's more than just app security?
Right, 100%.
By the way, I'm not saying you shouldn't do app security. You have to do that, but look at each one of those key vectors to figure out how resilient you are.
100%. Now, before we close out, any closing takeaways, anything people you'd recommend?
Oh, wow. We're almost up on time. Yeah, I saw the quick thing about maybe the future of cyber training. And you know what? As we go through this, let me maybe touch on this one a second. I think even on the training side, the skills of what people are using today are important. SOC Tier 1, incident response, hunting, and all those. But I think there's an element that the security teams, the SOC, needs to be looking at how do I hire and train and make sure that I have the new set of security skills for not only using the AI tools, but stress testing and making sure that they are safe and effective for the AI students. So there's going to be an element of governance, an element of safety of do I trust, these are black boxes. Do I trust what it's telling me and how do I verify what's going on? So maybe some closing comments aspects of it is there's a lot of changes happening. They're changing fast. It is impacting enterprises. And now the question is, how do you stress test? How do you prove it? How do you know what's actually going to be good and actually effective to put into production before you're going through? So in my mind, it's always trust but verify. I believe you, but I want to see it. And that goes back to where Lincoln Lab days you're talking. It's all about once I can put it on a range, once I can actually see it operating under real conditions, now I'm comfortable with it. I can understand the operating envelope. I can understand what it can and cannot do. And now I'm making much more informed decisions on where I'm going. So let me pause with that.
No, I think that's amazing. I mean, when you think about like everything you talked about, it's really about preparation and planning, right? Be one on your career development, your team, what your staff and where they are in their learning cycle of, are they just, hey, I'm a threat hunter and I do my threat hunting tools and I have my threat hunting methodology and that's what I do? Or are they always going through continuing education and learning and developing the new skill sets? Because you and I know, and I learned this, was kind of funny when I was in school at Trias College, they said this, oh, sorry to tell you, you're going to be a lifelong student. So you think you're going to finish this course and be done? That's not the career you chose. When you get out and probably in the next year, everything you learned in this course is going to be obsolete. And I was like, well, that just sucks. I'm going through this course. I'm going to be an expert in, Microsoft. I'm going to do that. And they're like, nope, you're going to go and there's going to be a new version and you're going to have to learn that new version. And there's going to be another version. You're going to have to learn that. And you just have to go. And I'm like, that set me up for the success because there's always something new coming out. There's always something you can learn.
100% agree. And especially with all these new tools, if you are not learning and discovering and trying them out and experimenting, you're going to fall behind. And that's going to be a challenge. And I would say even for the new students, the people who are graduating the early career, you got to be embracing AI. You got to be embracing the tool. It's your friend. It's your ally. It's assumed almost that you know and have those skills, or it's going to be a challenge.
Right. 100%. Now, one thing I want to add here. So if anyone wants to get a hold of Lee, I put a LinkedIn address. Take a screenshot and reach out to Lee. Great conversation. I mean, I've learned so much from you today. Thank you so much. Now, best way to get a hold of you through your website is simspace.com. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So if you guys ever want to kind of check out Lee's website, kind of get more information, check out the LinkedIn account, reach out to him that way. Also, reach out to him on his website. Thank you so much, Lee.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate actually great conversation. It's always great chatting with people on these topics. Thank you.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah. And I think, like I said, I learned a lot about our conversation and just like you're talking about, just the different areas that people need to look at.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Lee.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, that was a great conversation. I mean, I hope you guys got a lot of golden nuggets from that. When you're looking at like just the cyber ranges, I mean, things that we're talking about, and it was kind of interesting, like hearing the terminology of cyber ranges. I would come from the business world, so I always think of development, sandbox, and things like that. But he's right when he's talking about having that testing environment that you want to have everything that you want tested in that isolated environment and do your due diligence. I mean, so important. I totally agree with them. Real world testing, right? We're talking about taking that next step, going more due diligence, kind of getting that stress testing, put your team through it, your technology through it, making sure that it's up to a certain standard. And if not, go through development, go through business development, technology development, training and development, like whatever that may be to get you to that standard, and then retest and retest and retest. It's an evolution dynamic, security practice that's going to be evolving. You're never going to stop. So hopefully you got a lot of great information. Make sure you share, comment. And I just want to remind you, like, software's hackle, being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.